Okay. We are about 3 minutes late. Apologies for our dedicated audience for this, and good morning. My name is Balkan Devlin. I am a senior fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute in Canada, and I will be moderating this panel. And once again, I'd like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to talk about what I think is one of the most interesting projects and underappreciated projects in the continent, the 3Cs initiative. We have a great panel here today to talk about how the war in Ukraine changed the nature of this project and the meaning of it for Europe as well as for the broader Western world, and how the regional dynamics should inform both the future and the development of this project. So I'll very briefly introduce our panelists here, and then I'll ask them to have their opening remarks for about 5 minutes. When you have about a minute to go, I will start doing 1 minute if you don't look at me, and then it will be your time is up, and then we'll have another round of shorter duration, and then I will turn to the audience for the questions, and we'll hopefully have an interesting conversation. Let me very briefly introduce our panelists over here, and I'll go in the order of the program, as well as it happens to be the order they actually sit down here on the stage. To my immediate right, I have Wojciech Przybylski, editor-in-chief of Visegrad Insight and the president of the board at the Res Publica Foundation. Next to him, we have Ambassador Edgars Bondars, the Latvian ambassador for the 3Cs initiative, Andras Braun, the program officer of the International Republican Institute, and to my far right, Laurențiu Flueraru, Foreign Policy Advisor at the Foreign Policy Department of the Presidential Administration of Romania. So, without further ado, Wojciech, let me turn to you for your opening remarks for the first about 5 minutes. Over to you.
So I'm really pleased to be here and speak on the 3Cs. After so many has happened already, it seems like summer is close to the presidency of the Latvian presidency and the 3Cs initiative. And I think there are some great achievements and bold, ambitions were clearly demonstrated during the presidency of Latvia in the 3Cs initiative. We were most happy, for instance, to be invited to the Civil Society Forum as partners, and we developed the idea as much as we could, together also with Lato, but it was the President's initiative to put it even on the next gear, to find the purpose and even allow for a bit of a redefining moments for the 3Cs initiative. And indeed, I think the initiative itself needs also a bit of a redefining effort, especially in the context of the war. First of all, as you all know, or those who are interested in the 3Cs initiative know, this was set up originally I would call it to leverage the potential of the region within Europe. It was referring to the European transportation and European energy networks, and then it was also plugged into the European digital networks. These are systems of coordination of infrastructure across Europe that were set up even before the EU to help Europe's connectivity. And that was set around the time when we had a strong Chinese ambition manifested here in the region with the 17+1, which is fortunately now, I don't know, I can't subtract that quick to tell you what number it is currently, which also shows that the scale of the Chinese presence in the region has a potential to scale down while we still have the format of the 3 Cs being pursued by the countries of the region. This is, of course, this is still the ambition. The ambition is to leverage our regional cooperation and use the best of the potential the EU investment has in the region, along with international investment into the infrastructure that otherwise has been planned and executed mostly in the, you would say, national envelopes. So you would have still a situation across the region in which, for instance, I come from Warsaw. If you try to travel from Warsaw to Sofia, which is half the distance between Warsaw and Paris, by train, you spend twice as much time for doing that, for traveling that distance, as compared to Paris. If you want to travel from Warsaw to Vilnius or to Tallinn or Riga by train, well, you simply have to wait a couple of years for the railroad to be complete. That just shows the scale of negligence in a way, but also the lacks in the infrastructure that are still here in this region that is otherwise fastly developing economically. It has also security vulnerabilities that they are linked also to the lacks of infrastructure. One of those is energy, and the main sponsors of the initiative at the very beginning were emphasizing the regional vulnerability by not being connected enough. I have to say here, I come from Visegrad Insight, where we started the regional think tank and media platform, and of course, 3 Cs has a close link. It's an extension of the plans we have had in the Visegrad group. Just the Visegrad group is not enough, and 3 Cs is also not enough. Europe is ultimately the goal, to keep it closely united. The ambition there was to connect north and south and cut through the difficult parts of the geography that was there for centuries, and the countries and the political projects that are around this geography were never able to fulfill the promise of connectivity. Now this is an opportunity, it presents itself, and I don't speak for the government, which I don't know what our government is doing, not getting the cohesion funds that could actually deliver, but the 3 Cs initiative is essentially, in my mind, the ultimate leverage, self-made by design of the development banks from the region, to invest in the best use of the funds that already are here, to build plans that go across the region, and they are not just, limited to our borders, and along that line to bring about more investment from abroad, from overseas. That was a big promise, and still is a promise from the US, from other investors to invest in it. But probably, and I will stop at that, the 3 Cs is still at this stage that might become, in time, a very critical moment, because we still don't have anything, we don't have a successful 3 Cs initiative project that we could say, this is the signal of the initiative. This is something that is there because the 3 Cs initiative has been called to being. And I think this unfulfilled potential can still be there, but the time is getting shorter and shorter, and unless there is a major achievement because of 3 Cs that we see an added value, it will be losing its appeal. The region will stay, but if we are not having this major impact of the 3 Cs initiative, well, there will be another name for yet another initiative in the region.
Yeah. Well, no, I think this is fascinating, and the need to have perhaps a showcase of success in a way that makes this promises being fulfilled is going to be important moving forward in terms of increasing connectivity, be it transport, be it energy, be it digitalization. Ambassador, let me turn to you for your opening remarks for 5 minutes. And let's give us what your perspective on the issue.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. And I'm happy to be on the stage and see so many those who are interested in 3Cs initiative. Thank you very much, Wojciech, for mentioning the Riga summit as a successful one. I completely agree, and just would like to add that by every summit of 3Cs initiative, and in Riga it was 7th already, we have something new to offer. So this initiative is evaluating in its own way. And in Riga summit, there was not only a civil society forum, which was innovation, and it was great innovation, but also there was a meeting of parliamentarians, and there was, of course, very important announcement of the United States of participation in the 3Cs Initiative Fund. There also was a great interest from different entrepreneurs around the world in the business forum. And of course, Ukrainian issue was highly on the stage, and then Riga summit was, I think, significant because the declaration of Riga summit announced that Ukraine is invited to be a part of 3Cs initiative. So 3Cs initiative is a regional project. It's, of course, it's politically inspired and commercially driven. By every year, we see that there are some news, new initiative, new projects coming in, and especially if we speak about the business 3Cs Initiative Fund, there are already many projects for the observation and financing of these projects, and many are in so-called pipeline. So 3Cs Initiative are developing as quite successfully as a regional project. There is also transatlantic significance for 3Cs initiative, because if there will be strong transatlantic ties, then our security policy will be we will feel more safer. Then, of course, there's a global dimension as well, because at the time when the 3Cs initiative started, it was in 2015, still there was a 1+16 or 1+17 project, but which was developed for our region and China relations, but China has changed, and of course that's why I think this 3Cs initiative also is globally significant. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I think the transatlantic dimension is important, and I think it's, as I said in the beginning, the importance of the improving connectivity in these different levels, from transportation to energy to digitalization and further, and the combining that political and economic nature of it is not particularly as appreciated as it should be on the other side of the pond. And I think these sort of conversations are important to bring that to the front, in front of both the public and the policymakers. Andras, how does it look from Slovakia?
Well, first of all, thank you, Balkan, and of course, Lato, for this opportunity. It's great to be in Riga, actually back in Riga. We were here not too long ago. How does it look from Slovakia? Yeah, it's true that at the moment I do live in Slovakia, but I'm coming from Hungary. So two landlocked countries, it's always an interesting opportunity as someone coming from a landlocked country to talk about an initiative which has 3Cs in its name. So I will try to do my best. This morning I will try to focus on 2 points. And thank you so much, Wojciech and Mr. Ambassador, for setting the scene, because it actually gives me the opportunity to focus on other, I think, also crucial points. So my first point here this morning is resilience. So, of course, I completely agree with you that the priority projects that were mentioned as objectives of the Free Seas initiatives are not only important from a purely economic point of view. These projects in the field of energy, transport, digitalization became a geopolitical matter recently. Of course, that when it comes to about, or when we are talking about these investments, it will require multiple billions of euros, if not even more. So as I'm a political scientist and not a business investment specialist, I will not be able to answer the technical part of this question, that how we will get that money, how we will get that money from the private sector. But what I know is that we must remain credible and we must be a predictable business environment to attract investors. So I think that from this aspect, it is important that the region remains committed to the core values of the European Union, such as democracy, rule of law, and of course, market economy. We have to remain resilient also against external and internal challenges that we are facing. I don't have to say, of course, in details what China and Russia represents in this region. You know this very well, better than me. So what I would also like to say is that the Free Seas initiative, besides its role and its aim to complete the integration, the stronger integration within the European Union, it also has to be strongly connected to the transatlantic community. Because these countries, most of them are part of the so-called eastern flank. So to sum up of this part of my intervention, I think that democratic resilience, economic investments, and security being hard, or energy security, are closely linked to each other. This is like a triangle. If you remove any elements of this triangle, the whole thing would fall apart. And this is actually what brings me to my second point, which is integration and the capability of enlargement. So to quote from the concept note of this very specific panel, the Free Seas initiative is a comprehensive platform which connects business, politics, and civil society. So let me focus on civil society, because of course it's very important that political decision makers and leaders are able to meet on a regular basis. It's also great that business investors have a regular opportunity to discuss the issues of the region on a permanent basis. But when it comes to the future of the Central and Eastern European region, civil societies must also be involved. So please allow me to give you, all of you, a personal example. Within IRI, we do have a regional program, which is actually abbreviated by three letters, TSI. So this stands for Transatlantic Security Initiative. This is a regional program that brings together 27 young experts from the V4 countries and Romania. So, of course, we should at one point enlarge to the Baltics and also to Slovenia, Croatia, and Bulgaria. But this type of exchanges, I think, and I'm convinced, and this is what I learned when working with these guys. Some of them are actually present in the room, so thank you so much for getting up that early. That such exchange helped us to better understand the way how the different countries in this region are seeing and facing regional problems. In my opinion, sometimes we tend to see, maybe because of our difficult history and different traumas that these countries went through, our problems from a national point of view, and we do miss a bigger picture. We do not possess this prism, this Central European prism, on which we look through and we see not the same way, but we could at least establish a common point of view on the challenges that we are facing with. So, you know, when we were with this group in the Estonian city of Narva, at the Russian-Estonian border, or Russian NATO border, or Russian European Union border. Of course, on one side, on the European side, you have future, possibilities, predictability, and on the other side, you have, well, nothing, literally nothing. So from this point of view, as I was talking about the importance of the civil society, I would encourage more and more to cooperate with NGOs, CSOs, and the expert communities, and also to focus on programs that can equip and empower the next generation of decision makers in this region. So that's why I'm particularly happy that as a side event, the Future Leaders Forum was organized. So kudos to Lato once again. And as I mentioned, I just do not want to talk about integrity or integration, but also about enlargement. So of course, it's crystal clear that the topic of getting Ukraine into the Free Seas initiative is on the table for is on the agenda for a while now. And my opinion is that the best chance to help the recovery process of Ukraine is to integrate this country as much as we can to the European and also to the transatlantic structures. And I would like to go a little bit beyond that. Not just Ukraine, Moldova, which is also an EU candidate country now, Georgia, which is still also in the, which is in the Black Sea region, and also the Western Balkan countries. In the Adriatic region, some of these countries are part of NATO, and they should also benefit from the North-South connectivity. I will finish by saying that, that Europe is in a situation when we are looking for success stories. At this stage, I think that it is pretty hard to imagine any bigger success stories than contributing to the successful integration of Ukraine to our structures. And this could actually give greater momentum, a bigger geopolitical relevance for the Free Seas Initiative.
Excellent. I think the point you highlighted, that this is also a transformational project rather than just a transactional project, and that requires much more closer integration and attention to the civil society dimension, as well as more broadly the values component is actually, I think, quite important. And I also would like to echo your comments regarding the Future Leaders Forum. In this conference, generally, that's generally one of my favorite parts to engage with, to see young, driven leaders in the transatlantic space coming together and working together. So kudos to the organizers as well. Laurențiu, let me turn to you, and we talk about 3 Cs. So let's look at how it looks like from the Black Sea.
Thank you, Balkan. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for organizing this event within the Riga conference. I think it's not a mere coincidence. It comes after a successful mandate of Latvia to the 3SI. And I would like to thank you not only for inviting me, but also for a smooth transition towards Latvian mandate to the Romanian mandate. And I think it's important that we have this coordination. So thank you for this. It's very timely to have a discussion on 3SI. Indeed, the Romanian mandate comes in a critical moment, I would say. It's a juncture of, we see the initiative that is maturing. It's a time for consecrating the initiative, the 3SI, as a political platform for supporting and facilitating the investments in the region. We will all benefit from that, and actually we need to have more investments, and it's also a time when we have a geopolitically reconfigured situation due to the war in Ukraine. So this is the context we will all know. And the Romanian mandate basically will consecrate on 3 axes. I will briefly present the priorities. Of course, we have to have an open cooperation in terms with the participating states, with the other partners, but also we have to keep an eye to the other external partners that presented interest largely globally to the 3SI, because we experienced this situation, fortunately, that the 3SI has an increased visibility, and we will also like to move forward with that. We have also the good evolution in Riga. By the way, our intention is to consult all the participating states to see how we could implement the good results of Riga summit, including when it comes to Ukraine, because indeed we had that evolution. We have to see how we'll translate the decision by the political leaders for Ukraine. So one axis is open cooperation, and of course we have to stay result-oriented. This is our approach. The second pillar would be, of course, acting in full coordination, in full synergy with the EU strategies. it's of course one of, let's say, principle that stayed from the very beginning when the initiative has been launched. And another one, it's the third pillar, of course, staying committed to the primary objective of transatlantic, strengthening the transatlantic partnership. And for that, of course, we have to cooperate more with US partners in order to see more investments and actually to see how the decision in Riga would be materialized through concrete investments in concrete projects. I cannot agree more with Andras when he said that actually we have to focus right now, especially right now, on resilience. It's more than ever needed. So that's why, also that's why we will pay attention to strategic projects, and no surprise, you know that Romania was a big promoter of two of those projects, Rail to Sea and Via Carpathia. Of course, these are only two. We can add more, and we have actually more. So the idea is to stay focused in the current reality, which is, as all the other speakers mentioned, is fluid. We need to support Ukraine, and we support the summit, Riga summit decisions, but we would also like to see how Ukraine would like to be connected to the 3SI. So that's why we need to also to hear from, and not only from Ukraine. I can agree again with Andras in saying that Republic of Moldova, Georgia is also important, so we will not forget about them, and we will need to see how they would like to be involved in different 3SI projects. Investing in their resilience is investing in our resilience. So this is our approach, and of course, to conclude on the priorities, I could say that the approach that we'll have is that stronger will be together when it comes to participating states, but also with the ones that could invest more, which are attracted by the potential the 3SI represents. So I think for the time being, I will stop here, but that's the idea. Let's see how we could adapt the initiative, the projects. Adapting doesn't mean to change the initial scope, means really adapting to the context and see how we could build more strategic resilience and how we could make our projects not only more visible and more attractive, but also more beneficial in the current context. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to come to the issue of Ukraine and how the 3Cs initiative could be a useful vehicle for integrating Ukraine to the broader European and transatlantic community and contributing to the rebuilding of Ukraine after Ukraine wins the war against Russia. So I want to get back to that in the question and answer part. But I want to start, I will turn to audience in a few minutes, but I want to start with asking the panelists one sort of kickoff question. And if you can try to sort of respond within about 2 minutes each. And that is, when you look at the 3Cs initiative and when you look at the public discussion about it, what is the one thing that is underappreciated? That is one thing that is people are not paying sufficient attention to, but they should in understanding the future of it. So I'll go with the same order. So let me start with you, Wojciech. What are we missing generally when we look at it?
Well, generally speaking, the region doesn't take itself seriously, and the public opinion alongside. Usually the attitude is about being policy taker than policy maker. In the European Union context, that's super important, because the region's potential is there to connect with other partners, not alone, for influencing policies and coordinating policies on the EU level. Our legislations in the national states depend on what we all collectively decide in the EU. And the region's potential is unfulfilled in that respect, and it could be, it could be fulfilled with some of the priorities being the strategic common priorities of the region. And I think connectivity in the domain, especially in the context of the war related to energy, but also transportation, which both prove so important for Ukraine effort, are the key priorities. But here, hey, well, not all countries are on board. And I don't mean only participation in the fund, but specifically Hungary case, where the country is not really on board on any of these two critical questions. So I would say that next to, I mean, there is a low-hanging fruit, and the low-hanging fruit of the region is actually delivering something meaningful for that would have this sign of 3 Cs. And I believe the low-hanging fruit is somewhere in the domain of digital, which is the most difficult for some policymakers to grasp, but it's actually the easiest to carry out in terms of a regional investment of a scale that actually bears the sign and showcases the potential of that we can do something in the region. There are talks of various projects, and I'm not going to lobby for anyone, any of those. But this is, I think, the easiest because also it's the cheapest, the lightest, and the most sexy one of those all. The energy connectivity has been proving itself, and it takes a long time as an important development. It needs to continue. We need to have more interconnectivity in order to provide, for the time being, the fossil fuel that exists and is relatively better than others. But in times may prove to be important for other fuels which might not be so polluting. The transportation network, it's missed, but people, sometimes people do not know what they're missing, in a way. So there is a big discussion about whether, you know, we should invest in the roads that nobody even thinks of these directions to go, you know, from north to south across the mountains. To establish new possibilities of investment. Well, until it's being done, you cannot really test the hypothesis. And I think there is, again, a historical opportunity being that this region is connected through the European Union membership and with hundreds times fold the amounts of investment that is coming from the cohesion funds for the region that the 3SI has gathered, to actually use the 3SI as a leverage to make plans for the region. And that is being, I think it is being missed, despite in the policymaking also, despite the fact that 3 Cs initiative have all these values of transatlantic and the global importance. There is underappreciation of how much we can do for ourselves already in making these plans more realistic, rather than sometimes too big to be ever fulfilled when it comes to certain countries. And last point, I think this is super important, what Andras mentioned. And this is what drove us with the Foresight report. We know for 2 years we basically have been talking and working with policy circles on a foresight connecting, and during the pandemic it was even easier, hence my enthusiasm for digital 3 Cs. To map out the futures of the region. And the lowest hanging fruit, but also the most important in terms of civil society, is actually to have actors, not just foundations, association, business actors, and also the new or upcoming politicians, to plug into the discussion, be prepared, and be able to understand what other things there are to be done in the 3 Cs, and actually invest into this discussion, invest into this direction for more connectivity. So this is why I'm so happy that we pulled it out with the civil society forum has taken place, the first ever during the Latvian presidency, which I'm also personally happy as our policy impact increased in Visegrad Insight through the recommendation. But I think this is really the way to not just to create another forum, but to plug more people into the objectives, into the core objectives, and have them rethink and innovate and make them partly responsible of how this is being pushed forward.
Excellent. Ambassador, what are we missing?
Yeah, thank you, Wojciech. It was really great how you elaborated on that. I just would like to pick and continue because I think that we are missing general knowledge about Three Seas Initiative on all levels. Still, your think tank did a really great job to explain what the Three Seas are all about and how it will be used for the people. But I think there is a need for more explanation, more talks, more ideas, how people can benefit from Three Seas Initiative. It will encourage political environment. It will encourage business environment for investment. It will encourage regular society or civil society to see, to turn to more education maybe, or to see how to develop things that young people will be staying in the region, not going somewhere else to look forward for a better life. So I think what we are missing is more talks, more ideas, and more knowledge about Three Seas Initiative, about possibilities, how to use it for our own good.
Yeah, I mean, I think just going back to Wojciech's initial points as well, a positive vision with a case that actually has the stamp of Three Seas Initiative, and that provides a vision, a positive vision for the future for the region, I think is going to be an extremely important component. Andras, you also engage with the broader region is in your, in your position. What do you see that most people are not paying sufficient attention to?
So I think that this question was already answered again by the ambassador and Wojciech, so I will spare you some time. Lack of common vision is definitely there. And let me quote, since Wojciech was mentioning the Civil Society Forum, there was a declaration on that I was just reading it through this morning. Well, anyway. So it seems that it is too infrastructure heavy, and we are missing common goals in other areas than investing into infrastructures. And I can, of course, only repeat myself that if we could somehow better integrate the future leaders, we could benefit from that.
Oh, excellent. I think, I mean, the point you made earlier, the fact that those big, especially energy projects, takes time to come to fruition, to have their benefits being recognized, also delays this recognition and appreciation of it, and something, sort of a quick win that's visible that can be get with the digital realm, for instance, or engagement with the civil society is going to provide that momentum, perhaps moving forward. Laurențiu, when you look at it, what are we missing?
Yeah, I think once the 3SI is made more visible, because I can agree that this is currently a lack in knowledge. There is a risk and a potential. The risk is that we see today there are different demarches within the initiative or related to the initiative that are not harmful per se, but they are not focusing on the priorities set up by the leaders. So dilution of the attention from the priorities is one of the risks. And I will not get into the details, but we had previous discussions, for instance, with issues related to working groups, setting up a secretariat. And also, once again, I would like to congratulate Latvian mandate, because the attention was paid to the real issues, not to the ones that will just consume the time and not focus on the projects per se. So that's the risk. We will not intend to go into that direction. We will stay project-oriented, and especially to those projects that present strategic importance, that will build the strategic resilience. The potential is obviously the need to attract more funds. And we have the investment fund. We think that the current phase of the fund will be closed when all the participating states will contribute to that. So we will almost there. The other dimension is that we need to attract more private investments to the fund. And why not, once the initiative becomes more visible, and this is the trend, we have to encourage it, more private companies will be interested not only in the region, but particularly in using this instrument that we have created within the initiative, the 3SI fund. And this is another direction that we want to encourage. Bring more private investment to invest in those projects that have been endorsed by the political leaders, that present not only, let's say, strategic importance, but also economic relevance. So that's it.
No, I think that's an excellent point. I want to turn to audience in a minute, but also highlight or underline the investment component, and particularly as the changing investment climate when it comes to initiatives that are supported or funded by or in China, for instance, and whether this 3Cs initiative actually and investments within the region can be seen as ways for the pension funds and others as alternatives to invest in democratic and more stable places rather than going and being hostage to the Chinese regime, for instance, in China, is I think an interesting point to elaborate. We have about 15 minutes, and you have been very patient and got up in the morning and joined us here today. So I want to turn to the audience for questions that what you would like to ask to the panelists. Please. Yeah, if someone can bring up the mic, or you can take the mic. Yeah.
Right. So Stefan here. So my name is Mars Sanjans from Center for Geopolitical Studies, Riga. First of all, thank you all for entertaining us at such an early hour of Saturday. So this is Saturday. Thank you so much. I completely commend the 3Cs initiative. At the same time, some questions remain. If we scroll back time, 6 years back in Riga, Riga welcomed Li Keqiang, the Chinese Prime Minister. Riga hosted the 16+1 summit. Well, there is much of enthusiasm in the air. And as Ambassador Bondars mentioned, of course, China has changed. But still, I don't want to compare both initiatives. Of course, they're so different, you know. China has changed considerably, but still there are some resemblances. So 6 years ago, full of enthusiasm and willingness to engage, and now basically the format is dead. Latvia and Estonia left the format this year, and Lithuania pulled out already the year before. So in 6 years, 3Cs initiatives, where will we be? Will we still be so enthusiastic about it? And what should be done so that it didn't fail? So any of panelists, if you might kindly reflect on this. Thank you so much.
So what's the future? What's the future of 3Cs initiative? Yeah, no pressure. Just try to solve that. Anybody would like to take?
In 6 years? Well, it will be building extensions to the enlarged Europe, Western Balkans, Ukraine, the prospects of Belarus on the reverse course from today. That is the promise, because of 3Cs as compared to 17+1 has a major difference, I would say philosophical difference. It's not about geopolitics, it's about defying geopolitics. The region geopolitically does not exist. We have been the victims of geopolitics for most of our history. And what the region has to offer through the 3Cs initiative is to insulate itself within also European Union mechanism against the geopolitical trends which are never fortunate for that region. So anyway, any effort we take in order securing our future against the geopolitical pressures is our core interest. And it only needs, and this is not only, this is so much is needed, as Ambassador Edgars Bondars mentioned, to have this awareness and to build this awareness through also discursive method. I mean, that there is not enough even of understanding of how this is important, that we do it for securing our future. This is not just about anything else against the tides that we are constantly exposed to.
Anyone else would like to take a shot at what it would look like in 6 years, please?
Well, I think that it's pretty impossible to predict the future. I mean, who saw COVID coming? Who saw, okay, I'm not saying who saw Ukraine coming because I know that the Baltic countries were raising the alarm for many years, of course. And also after the lessons learned from the Georgia war, we could see that it may come. So I'm not saying that it was invisible, but still some countries thought that it would never happen. So there are many ifs in this answer. So when we are talking about the Three Seas region, we are talking about more or less 110 million citizens of the European Union, or maybe even more. It's around 30% of the total territory of the European Union. So it has, again, a potential to become even more relevant. If we manage to develop a common vision on our future, based on resilience, based on investments, based on connectivity, based on Europeanism and transatlanticism, I can see a future for this region. And I think that the more integrated we are, the more resilient we are towards the external, competitors or challengers. It's much easier to deal with, I don't know, external influences, be it Chinese or Russian, if we are united, than dealing with them one by one. So I think that actually the name of the initiative, 16+1 or 15+1 or 14+1, you know, it was never focusing on the region. It was always someone plus one. It was never a regional initiative. Free SI is a regional initiative, and it has to stay like this.
Yes, please.
Yeah, but I don't think it's a problem with enthusiasm. Enthusiasm in general is a good thing. Major projects, I would say, comes from enthusiasm, but I get your point. The thing is not to remain at the level in the realm of enthusiasm. That's why we have this approach, and we would like to stay focused on priorities, concrete projects. Let's move them forward. We already said what those projects are. We are right even before the war in Ukraine. Those are the main priorities. Now we have to adapt, of course. We will adapt them. But the direction we set up when we created the initiative was already good. So instead of predicting the future, let's create it.
Excellent. Please.
If I may.
Of course.
Three Seas initiative is commercially driven. And if there will be successful projects, if there will be investment, then whatever title will be, we will be successful and we will succeed. This also coincides with Europe general lines. For example, Global Gateway, which is on the table now and which is shaping strategy for European Union. So, but I think that it will depend on projects and how successfully they will be implemented. And of course, we are value-based.
Nothing succeeds like success, right? So I think going back to the original point of we need a success story to push it is important. Please.
Yes, Andrew Mick to the Marshall Center. Two questions actually and a comment. One, I am a bit surprised that nobody mentioned the military dimension of what the Three Seas is supposed to be. Military mobility north-south, you have post-imperial legacy infrastructure that has been running east-west all these past few centuries. And the second point is that I have a distinct feeling that I think the comment about this not being a distinct geopolitical region is spot on. And the question is, how do you reverse that? How do you make it into something different? I was at the Munich Security Conference when Secretary Pompeo issued the $1 billion challenge, and there were no takers. You will not build this region with private equity or investment, especially now when you have the largest war Europe has seen since 1945 right across the border. So let's stop, talking about cooperation. Let's look at hard security issues as the driver here. So I'd like the panel to comment on the following. First of all, why isn't Finland or Sweden represented in this conversation? I mean, this is a geostrategic shift of tectonic proportions that's about to take place. The last I looked at the map, they have something to do with the Baltic Sea as well. So that's the first question. And the second question is, should the path forward be government-driven and not private equity-driven? Because in these conditions, I believe only the governments can generate the kind of funding that you need. And the third point, you need military voices in this discussion. You need people in uniform who are looking at operational planning across the flank for this to have any sense. Otherwise, it'll be, kind of Me Tooism, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but it'll be the Me Tooism. We are also a region. We're also here. Well, nobody cares. You have a historic opportunity because of Finland and Sweden joining the alliance, because Putin lost his mind and invaded Ukraine, to actually come out from the second tier and become really what you should be, the frontier of the West. Thank you.
I think this is a fascinating question, and I'd like to turn to the panel to comment on both the military dimension and I think it's a related question, related sort of concept of should the geopolitics be the driving component and provide the push to make the region relevant and meaningful and coherent in order to be able to move forward, or just in any one of the other initiatives that we tend to have all the time but end up not going anywhere. Which reminds me the whole thing with the BSEC and Black Sea and all that thing, without that particular push. Anybody would like to comment, please?
Yeah, thank you for the question. We didn't indeed touch upon military per se, but we alluded many times during the discussions, at least several times I discussed, and Andras also mentioned the strategic resilience. This is what is in the back door of that. Those projects that I mentioned, Rail to Sea and Via Carpathia, are also not only of economic importance, but they are important also because they could improve military mobility and infrastructure resilience. And indeed, they will, once they are finalized, they will help moving troops around, so improving military mobility in a more, I would say, robust manner and more savvy manner. And the connectivity between north and south in the eastern flank is obviously very important for consolidation of allied defense and deterrence. So I will agree with you. We also have to take into account what are the roles and the drivers of this initiative and the reasons why this initiative has been launched and the modalities how it was launched. Because you mentioned the governance. Of course, without the governments, you cannot push forward, but there is also this economic component. So this is what we have to figure out, how we can make more attractive for the private companies, how we could present the projects that political leaders agreed, and when leaders agree projects, that means they are of regional importance, strategic importance. The question here is not whether the government should be involved, but how to, once the government is involved, how to attract also private investment. So to say, how to make the projects more appealing to private companies. So I think that could be one answer.
Wojciech, and then
yeah. Definitely, I'm not having a military uniform on myself, but I think I mentioned that in my first comment that it has been about north-south connectivity for security reasons, and this of course has been now materialized in the context of the Ukraine, and the whatever possibilities we have had, they're being utilized. The next possibilities we might have in terms of development of these routes, well, they will take as much as any investment can take. So this is long-term planning. And I agree with you that for this region to be taking itself really seriously, we need to have governments planning their strategies together on the basis of security, actually, of understanding, having a similar perception of security challenges. And it would make sense from the Polish perspective to have Sweden and Finland on board. But then the big question is, why would we have Hungary on board at the same time? The kind of, yes, it's a bit of a problem currently, have that challenge. And the big promise, and I think the big ambition, is to have actually a long game in our minds to, well, wait for different governments change. So circumstances, I believe, will be also changing that will allow Hungary to reprogram its security and to think that its best chances are not with global reshuffle, but actually strengthened world order.
Ambassador, about 50 seconds.
Yes, thank you, gentlemen, for the question and reminding the angle of security policy. I think during this conversation we already mentioned the transatlantic ties. We mentioned also the eastern flank of NATO. So a lot of 3 Cs is to be read between lines, and keeping in mind the security policy, of course. And 3 Cs initiative is not copy-paste for B9 format, but of course all the infrastructure is about resilience and mobility, so it's going hand in hand.
Excellent. Andras, do you have any last points before we wrap it up?
I will give that last 10 seconds for you. So.
Okay, thank you. We are even 5 seconds early before we finish up, so I'd like to turn to the panelists and thank them for this great panel, and thank the audience for coming up this morning and for the questions. And we could have gone another hour, I think, quite easily. But thank you very much. And this is definitely an issue that we need to be paying attention to going forward. So thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you.